Saskatoon. And that's a very exciting place for me. It was when I was a boy of 14 in Saskatoon that I accepted the Lord. So for me to go back, the very first time for me to go back, and I'm still living sort of in the excitement of having had opportunity to go back. I asked if I could go to the Besborough Hotel. Anybody here know Saskatoon at all, or somewhat, or perhaps somewhat? And they were having the youth conference there, the youth councils there when I was 14, and at the Besborough Hotel. So I'm a bit nervy anyway. So I asked if I could go into the banquet hall. She said, "Well, there's nothing happening there." I said, "That's better still, because I really just want to go and have a look at it. Do you mind?" She said, "No, I don't." So she allowed me to go into the banquet hall, and I just stood there. It was darkened. It was all prepared for some kind of a banquet, rather. And I just stood there for a few moments and reflected upon what's happened to me since I was 14. As a missionary, gone around the world at least twice for the Army and for the Lord. And to thank Him for all that He's meant to me as I looked at that massive banquet prepared for that evening, and I thought that, yes, but I guess there hasn't been a banquet that's ever been served in any hotel that's been any richer than the spiritual banquet that has been mine since the day I said yes to God. And I thank Him. I was telling the folk in Saskatoon about a time when we had an officer come from the States, and we were living on the Afghanistan border at the time, and he was going to be speaking to my village people. Everyone speaks Punjabi, he didn't. And so I said to him, "Have you ever been translated?" He gave me a rather strange look, and I said, "It's not a spiritual experience." Believe me, it won't be when my people get rid of it. I said, "I'm not doing the translating, and I'm a little concerned that maybe the chap will be a little nervous. You know, you come here, you've got all this velvet trim, you look like a Christmas tree." And so I said, be very careful. We want short little sentences. If you try long compound sentences and idiomatic English and lots of illustrations that relate to TV when we don't even have electricity, you're going to be in trouble. So I said, just use simple little sentences and he'll be fine. The thing is that if you don't do that, he'll make up what he thinks you want to say. I spent half an hour with this chap. Finally, he stood up to speak with a typical American drawl, with his hands in his pockets, and he says, "Well, I'm just tickled to death to be here." And the translator looked at me, and I sort of gave him a nod, as though to say, "Go for it, you know." So the translator, in a typical tone in Punjabi, translated, "I'd rather be dead than be here." And I let it go. Serves you right. After all the time I spent trying to tell you what to do. So if I tell you I'm tickled to death to be here, it doesn't mean that I'd rather be dead. I'm going to start off in quite well, not for me unusual, because I tend to be an unusual person, telling you a children's story. So if you all fall asleep, it won't be because of what I've said, it'll just be because you think it's beneath you or above you or beyond you or something. How many have these books for your children or your grandchildren? If not, they're $10. $5 in the store, but the other $5 is for Save the Ratcliffe Children's Fund. If you feel you'd like to have one. I heard this man, I don't know if you have or not, I heard him being interviewed on one of the stations. Robert Munch comes from Guelph, writes children's stories. There are a number of them. They're hard to come by. They're very popular. I'm now buying them for grandchildren that I hope to have someday. Somebody said, one of the women that was talking to him said, "I like all your stories. They're very interesting for children. But the one called Love You Forever, I don't understand at all. It doesn't make much sense. It's a bit foolish. It's certainly ambiguous. And I don't see how you expect children to believe this kind of stuff that you're putting in this book." Well, he said, "Don't you like it?" Well, she said, "I like it. In fact," she said, "there's something there for me, for my children, for my grandchildren, for everybody. But I really can't understand the rationale behind it, because it doesn't make much sense." She said, "However, I've got to tell you, I like it." She said, "Do you happen to have it with you?" He said, "Yes, I do." She said, "Do me a favor. Will you read it for me?" So he said, "All right, I will." So since I've heard him read the book, I'm going to read it for you in its entirety this morning. I hope you like it. A mother held her new baby and very slowly rocked him back and forth, And while she held him, she sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby will be. The baby grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. Grew until he was 2 years old, and he ran all around the house. He pulled all the books off the shelf, pulled all the food out of the refrigerator, took his mother's watch and flushed it down the toilet. And sometimes his mother would say, this kid is driving me crazy. But at nighttime, when that 2-year-old was quiet, she opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, looked over the side of the bed, and if he was really asleep, she picked him up and rocked him back and forth, back and forth. While she rocked him, she sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby. The little boy grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until he was 9 years old. Never wanted to come in for dinner. Never wanted to take a bath. When Grandma visited, he always said bad words. And sometimes his mother wanted to sell him to the zoo. But at night time, when he was asleep, the mother quietly opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, and looked over to the side of the bed, and if he was really asleep, she picked up that 9-year-old boy and she rocked him back and forth. While she rocked him, she sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby will be. The boy grew. He grew and he grew, he grew. He grew until he was a teenager. He had strange friends, and wore strange clothes, and listened to strange music. And sometimes his mother felt like she was in a zoo. But at nighttime, when the teenager was asleep, the mother opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, looked over the side of the bed, and if he was really asleep, she picked up that great big boy and rocked him back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby. But the teenager grew. He grew and he grew. He grew until he was a grown man. He married and left home, got a house across town. But sometimes on dark nights, the mother got into her car and she drove across town. And if all the lights were out in her son's house, she opened his bedroom window, crawled across the floor, go to the side of the bed, and if that great big man was really asleep, she picked him up and rocked him back and forth. While she rocked him, she sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. Oh, well, that mother, she got older. She got older and older and older. One day she called up her son, and she said to him, you better come and see me, because I'm very sick and old. So her son came. When he came to the door, she tried to sing the song. She sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. But she couldn't finish, because she was too old. So the son went to his mother. He picked her up, and he rocked her back, back. And while he rocked her, he sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I live, I know you. When the son came home that night, he stood for a long time at the top of the stairs. Then he went into the room where his new baby daughter was sleeping, and he picked her up in his arms. Very slowly rocked her back, back. While he rocked her, he sang, I'll love you forever, I'll love you for always, as long as I live, my baby. And the lady said to me, like this is a story there for all of us, that we love our children regardless of what age they are, how grown up they become, how far away they live. There's also a lesson there that the boy was not really asleep. He knew the song. He could sing it. And passed on the tradition to his children. But she said, you know, it is a foolish sort of story. Why did you write it? And he said to her, do you have a copy of the book? She said, yes, I do. He said, would you look please in the front cover? And you'll see that I've dedicated it to someone. So she looked inside. And he said, you'll see the words there. It's dedicated to Sam and Jilly. He said, I would like you to know that Sam and Jilly are the name of our twins that were born. And they both died in infancy. And I wrote it for them. I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. Not as long as you're living, but as long as I'm living, my baby will be. And all of a sudden, it's not a silly story. For somehow or other, that man has opened up to me a part of himself that was perhaps very painful, very hurtful, very sad, and yet a very precious, lovely memory that perhaps I would not have had. When we're talking about pastoral counseling, friends, that's exactly what we're talking about. An opportunity to get beyond people's words, outer reactions, situations and circumstances that are easily seen by other people. But you and I have to have that tenderness, that perception, that look within that helps us to ask the question, what's beyond the words? Why do you act like you do? Why do you respond to situations and circumstances and people and life as you do? Can't I help you somehow to understand something? And can't you perhaps, as I listen to you, draw me into your world so that what you do, what you say, how you act has meaning and purpose? Someone has said, and quite rightly so, I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care. And I want to bring into perspective this morning the importance of remembering that in Christian pastoral counseling that you are involved in as you work for the Lord within a ministry, that this is an important focus that we cannot forget. That we cannot forget. That we have to be caring, sensitive, loving persons. And that's what's got to come across first and foremost before we do anything else in the way of therapy for people. They have to know the premise from which we come, that we care for them, that they're important to us. That when we're talking about people, we're not talking about quote-unquote caseloads. I'm talking right now about you as a person, as an individual. What do I mean when I talk about caring? I mean basically this. I'm going to give you some notes in a moment. That we have to remember that there has to be, coming from us, from the very moment we start trying to work with them and share with them, a deep concern for them as individuals. That's got to be there. They expect it of us. We cannot let them down. We've got to try to understand where they're coming from. It was so easy for this woman to be judgmental. Why do you write such a silly book? She hadn't taken the time to hear the story and understand. And I get concerned at times because we become quote-unquote so professional that we think we know what's wrong with these people and we shortcut it and don't realize that even in the telling of the story is the therapy itself. Trying to understand where people are coming from and how we can help them and be receptive. I know these are basic rules, but sometimes I have wondered at times when I have listened to some of the pain and heartache that people come to me with, if we really do show respect for people as they are. Can we sometimes in our counseling even become manipulative as the kind of person we want them to be, and I can help you if, but, and perhaps, and give some kind of strings attached? Without respect for them as individuals, as persons. I have more respect for the kind of person I hope you will become because we have had this encounter, rather than the bottom line of respect for them as individuals. Willing to take risks. I'm talking about you as an individual now. The importance of realizing that sometimes with people, with human nature, with folk in trouble, with difficulties and burdens and heartaches and needs, there are times when we have to take those kinds of risks and put it out our limit time. Because we have faith in people and have confidence. And finally, willing to accept help. And acknowledgement of our own finitude. That we are not the last word. That there are many other people who can be resources for us, be supportive of us, so that we ourselves will be sensitive to what they need, and if it's beyond what we can give them, that we ask for help, and really feel that we are part of a supportive team to be helpful to people. This isn't in your notes, and I just want to touch base on it before I hand out the book that I'm giving to you. We're really going to care for people. We've got to bring into focus our remembrance of this. that if we're going to care, and I would hope that there aren't any in this room who are counseling or work or interaction with people within the jurisdiction of Salvation Army ministry that don't care for people. That's the premise, is it not? Just a reminder that it's always going to cost us. It's really going to cost us much in the way of money, but it is going to cost us time and energy and that kind of drain. It always is costly to be a caregiver. Always. A number of you in the workshop this morning are officers, and others are not. It matters not to me. I still say that regardless of where we are coming from, our background or vantage point, that it's going to be costly. I would hope that none of us here look at the people that we have to share with and concern ourselves with and be burdened with as the kind of people that just close the books at 5 o'clock and not have some concern, some empathy for the kinds of people that we're dealing with. There has to be an awareness of those needs. What are they needing? How can I help them? What is the situation? What are their circumstances? What is their background? An understanding of that. If we're going to be caring, we've got to be responsible. By that I mean we've got to show some maturity in the way in which we handle people and look after them. That kind of fragile person that moves into your setting, that needs you desperately. But I also say, and I'll say it a few times today, I'm sure, we have to also be sure that when we're talking about being responsible, that we are confidential. That we're not chatting about it all over the place. Some people are hurt so badly by this, by the time they come to us, they don't want to open up anymore. I've done that too often. I've been too hurt. And all of us have to remember, caring is done by example. Caring is done by example. In discussing how we would best serve the time period today, I felt that we would use as a model the counseling skills format module that we use when we're teaching officers basic counseling skills. And the book that I'm going to give you relates specifically to how you would handle situations with people who are having marital difficulties. But the more we looked it over, the more we said, and I found proven it to be true myself, that the module itself, whilst being used very often for helping troubled marriages, is a module that can be used in all types and situations and circumstances that you will encounter that relate to counseling. We've called it a case model. I'm going to give it to you in a minute. The thought before you open it and you see a number of pages that relate specifically to marriage counseling, that I would just give you this preamble that would help you to realize that although we're not going through all the pages, some of it is very helpful. We've also brought with us a video of some counseling going on. It is marriage counseling, but what I want us to look at are what are the tactics that are being used? What are you seeing happening here so that you can process it yourself? Case model basically means this. We have to ask ourselves this. How do we connect with people? That's the first segment. How do we connect with people? How do we link up with them? How do we make them feel comfortable? And we're going to watch a video and you're going to look at it and then we're going to pull it apart a bit. How do we assess what best they need? What are their problems? What are the difficulties? What are their struggles? What are their heartaches? Next, what's the strategy? What am I going to use? What are some of the tools that I'm going to use that are going to help me to be supportive of this person? And finally, how do I exit? So that I'm not counseling for the next 10 years. So that it's done in a concise, proper fashion, so that it's not going an ongoing problem, so that I'm only dealing with the content level and not dealing with the basic difficulty that is beneath the content, so that we get to the end of it. For that purpose, I'm going to pass out these booklets. There's one each. Put your name on it. And as I say, don't be confronted or discouraged when you see that it has a lot to do with marriage counseling. Because I want to look at how you would do counseling as an individual. You'll notice this workshop is in 2 segments. Again this afternoon. You'll notice also that we've put all the writing, all the information on the right-hand side, so that on the left-hand side you can make any notes you wish to make. No? I was told there would be 40 in the workshop. Sorry. We can run off some more this afternoon. Don't know if we have husbands and wives who are present in the same workshop. Maybe you could organize yourselves to sit together. But I was told to bring 40, so that's what I did. Have we got enough? How many more do we need?
Could we have something back over here? Could we share it back there?
If there are people who didn't sign up, who are just auditing, then perhaps you would give it to folks who signed up. Before we get into that, but I wanted to give you that little booklet so you could perhaps put this inside there somewhere. It's not in your notes. I want you to just write down what I'm going to be telling you on any of the front pages. Writing on the left-hand side. Because this is important. If we're going to indeed look after people, these are some things that John Powell says, and I think it's a good premise. Anywhere at all. He said if you're going to be helpful to people, if you're going to be supportive of people, if you're really going to be a caring person so that they will feel comfortable when they come to you, these things are important. 1, know yourself. Secretary. She did give me these. You can write it on here. Put a punch in it. Wait for you to get them. Sorry about that. That will fit into your book. It's important for you to have an understanding what do you bring. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Do you know yourself? Are you comfortable with who you are? Your own personal insecurities are very much going to come through in a counseling session. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What do you bring? Do you know yourself? Do you know what you bring? Do you know the areas that need to be looked at within your own life? Are you dealing with that? It's all right for us to get ourselves in some sort of counseling pedestal and tell people how they ought to be living and what they ought to be doing. But I think it's very important in Christian counseling that we ourselves take stock of our own lives. What are we doing about circumstances and situations within our lives that have to be dealt with? If I were to go around the room this morning and ask you what are the strengths and the weaknesses that you bring by personality and background to your counseling, to your counseling room, do you know what they are? Are you trying to work on weaknesses so that you will somehow be a better person? What you contribute and what you bring is of more value. An ongoing process for ourselves. Know yourself, be yourself. We're all very different, we're all very unique. We bring that uniqueness. Whilst we have a number of skills that are similar, nevertheless the way in which we approach people, the way in which we approach our ministry is all very unique, very different. Know yourself, be yourself. The third one, incongruous but true, forget yourself. I hope that somehow you've developed some skills whereby when you enter into a counseling situation, you are able to put into practice some inner disciplines that put aside some of your own concerns, your own bias, some of your own tiredness. If you're too tired or too weary, you shouldn't be doing it. That's all going to be affecting your listening skills. You can't be an attentive listener while that's there, or your mind is caught over there areas of concern that you haven't dealt with. We've got to be able to move right into their area of concern, to listen attentively, to respond in a fashion that is very obvious that we are with them, that they are our prime concern just now. And that can only happen when we have dealt with ourselves, when we know ourselves, when we feel comfortable with ourselves, then we move into areas of concern concern for other people. Forget yourself. The bracket here is important. In loving others, says Powell. Find a faith you can believe, an inner experience, so you're not just passing on a lot of head knowledge, but something within your own spirit that you know and understand and have tried for yourself. An expression of your own inner faith, which I believe, which I live, which I experience, which I exemplify. I make no apology for that within our ministry. That has to be intact. That has to be seen. That has to be there. A faith you believe. And lastly, he says, find a place you can belong. Place you can belong. I hope you feel comfortable in the setting in which you find yourself. I hope you aren't one of those that's just been thrown into that kind of a situation or circumstance and you feel uncomfortable with it. If that is so, then perhaps you ought to be speaking to someone, because you will not be giving the quality of ministry and service that those people are requiring from us. We're not comfortable with it. If somehow or other the workload that you're being given includes a caseload of counseling that you're not comfortable with, I would suggest that you be looking at that, because that's not fair to them or to you. On page 2, you have the model itself. How do we connect? You just want to underline it or circle that word connecting. How do we connect with people? How do we go about it? We're going to see that on the video in a few moments. Page 2. How do we assess? Circle it, please, that second one. What is the strategy we're going to use? What are the tools we're going to use to help them? Page 2. And how do we end this? I get concerned with people who somehow cling to those people as a counselor. If you ever need me, call me kind of attitude, and it goes on for years and years and years, sometimes because they've never got past the content level, or they've never got down to the problem itself, always the periphery. And I often wonder if it's because they themselves need to feel needed or wanted, and if that's so, then we have some difficulties. Turn to page 3, and there's a middle paragraph that I just want to bring to your attention. Recognize the cruciality of skills that will enable a couple or whomever to cope with future problems, as well as those that are brought to the counselor. It's been said the problem is not the problem, underline it please, but coping with the problem. Like the analogy sometimes used, respecting third world self-help programs. Give a man a fish, you can feed him today. Teach him to fish, and you can feed him and his family. And I'd like to feel the kind of counseling that we are doing within the structure of our ministry in the Salvation Army is that kind of counseling. We're endeavoring to get to the base, to the root of their need, so that it's not an ongoing process. It will go on with these people forever and forever and a day. How difficult that is. On page 5, at the top of the page, we talk about 3 of the things that are so vitally important. You see them there? Will you tick them off? Non-possessive warmth, accurate empathy, and non-defensive genuineness. What do I mean when I talk about non-possessive warmth? Somebody explain that to me. What does it mean to you when you hear that being said? Non-possessive warmth. Qualify it for me. Somebody? Anybody? All right, it's mutual, not just for myself. Someone else? What does it mean to you? Tell me, please. Yes. Pardon, not smothering. Something else? That's right. Not just trying to take over. I'll live it for you, step by step, day by day. You come to me, I'll help you through it. Something else? Tell me. Think about it. Non-possessive warmth. Something else. What does it say to you? A caution, perhaps.
Just because you're helping them doesn't mean that they belong to you.
What about accurate empathy? Tell me what it means. Anyone? Someone? Accurate empathy. We're going to talk about it a little later, but what does it mean to you when you see that? And that's one of the things that we bring to a counseling room. What are we talking about?
To understand and not get hooked in.
Pardon?
To understand and not get hooked into their problem.
To understand but not get hooked in? Why would we use the word accurate in front of empathy? Be analytical about it. Anything else that comes to mind? Any other way in which you put it?
Identify their problem.
Identify the problem, and then the empathy part. Then once we've identified the problem, we can move in much more deeply rather than simply at empathy. What do I mean by non-defensive genuineness? Give me a handle on what that means, because it's so important. Sometimes within our counseling, perhaps it isn't there. Non-defensive genuineness has to do with integrity. Tell me what it means. Honesty. Another couple of words.
Not two-faced.
Not two-faced.
Gotta apologize for what you say.
Not apologetic. All right. Something else? Be shocked. Something else? Not trying to prove your point. Something else.
It's not your agenda.
Quite right. It's not your agenda. Therefore, if they don't go the way in which you think they ought to be going, therefore you try to bring them back on track, and so at the end of the counseling session you'll feel quite happy because they've done all the things you wanted them to do. You'll be manipulative, and they're not really helped very much. Very true. We've given you some biblical dimensions, and we're not going to go through them, except you might want to put a quote that I read relating to Zacchaeus. How Zacchaeus felt when he met Jesus, and Jesus confronted him, assertive but not aggressive in the way in which he spoke to him. And Zacchaeus, in remarking about the day that he met the Christ, said these words, "I saw in the eyes of Jesus the man I was meant to be." I saw in the eyes of Jesus the man I was meant to be. That kind of sensitivity to people, giving them a challenge to grow. Look at the quote at the bottom of that page. Counseling is not merely the use of certain techniques. It is first of all, underline it please, the counselor's use of himself. And that's why I'm dealing this morning with a considerable amount with what you bring as a person to a counseling session. The counselor's use of himself in such a manner that helps the counselee do something constructive about his trouble. He still owns it. Because he comes to you for counseling, you don't take it on and try to live his life for him. It's still his life. It's still his difficulty. It's still his problem. It's still his trouble. The key is not so much, please note it, the techniques employed, important as they are, it's, underline it please, the total attitude of the counselor. How he feels about people and what he believes about them and himself. On page 6, we've given you an explanation of non-possessive warmth, and you've touched this very nicely, I think, but in the third paragraph, just note it, please, put a bracket beside that third paragraph. It's this attitude that is perceived in Jesus' relationship with people and what is meant by agape love. Crucial for the Christian counselor who must care, underline it, please, unreservedly for people. The next paragraph, put a bracket beside it. It's only the experience of the relationship in which he is loved, underline it please, the relationship in which he is loved, that an individual can feel dawning respect for and acceptance and even a fondness for self. So that's what we are endeavoring to do as we connect with people. Make them feel by the way in which we interact with them that they are important, that they are valued, affirm them, make them feel comfortable, endeavor to have an acceptance of themselves. Thus he begins to see himself as lovable, worthwhile person. Don't you find that to be one of the most difficult, I would think, with the kind of people that enter into your counseling room? That they themselves have poor self-esteem, low self-image, feeling that no one cares and I'm rejected and so I ought to be because of what I've done or who I am or whatever the circumstances. That last paragraph, we put a dot beside it. When people are in need or are having some kind of problem, their manifestation of themselves, the way they look and sound and talk can be pretty ugly, pretty beautiful, or pretty painful. Underneath all this, I see the living human who I feel would use himself or herself differently, or if he or she were in touch with the life that he or she is and has. I never ask if the crops has life. I only ask how it can be touched. Before we move in on the next page, there's another quote from Crabb's book that possibly you've got it. Let me, at the top paragraph, let me underline the central importance of, please, relationships in counseling. This is the emphasis I'm endeavoring to bring this morning. Only, see it? Put a star beside it or something. Only in the atmosphere of what? Of safety, circle it, will a person openly look at himself and consider a changing belief which for years have determined his root of personal worth. Before we look at the video, just one more thing, Fred, if you don't mind. I want you to just check these off for yourself. To ask yourself, before we move into looking at people, how much of this is you? You can look at it on the overhead while it's being passed out. How much of this is you? This is what I feel by the criteria that we bring to Christian counseling. These are the things that must be there. These are the essentials that we cannot do without. If you were to scale yourself on a score of 1 to 10, how well would you do as a person? Give a moment while make your passing. But look at them. You see how important they are? What do I mean by this? I'm talking here about giving people our full attention, that we're not in any way distracted by what they're saying. Those of us who are doing counseling pretty well every day of our lives know how distracting little things can be, and how we ourselves get distracted, or by what they're doing can distract us from the thought processes they're trying to share with us. And the least we can do when they've come to us with their heartache, their burden, their anxiety, whatever it might be, is give them their full attention. I've very often watched Salvation Army officers, and I'm in a different corps usually every weekend, and they're shaking hands with somebody at the door. They're saying, God bless you, and as they're saying something, don't go without the war cry. Did you see this bulletin board? I want to see you before you go. I need your car on Tuesday. We'll see you Thursday night at the, And what happened to this poor person here who's endeavoring to be shaking hands? They're almost shaken off. They could be saying the alphabet backwards 3 times. It wouldn't matter because he's so engrossed in everything else. When people come to us, that's the least we can give is full attention. Don't allow yourself to be distracted. And that's why I say we've got to be careful of our caseload, the number of people we're going to see in a day, and how tired we are in taking care of ourselves, so that we can be sensitive to what they're saying. Somebody often say to me when we're teaching marriage counseling skills in particular, but the problem with me, Major, is I don't do it often enough, and I don't know what to say next. Like you seem to know what to say next. I said, if you would listen to what they're saying, you'd know what to say next. The problem is you're so concerned about what's my next question, where should I go next, that in the process, you're not hearing what they're saying. If you're hearing what they're saying, if you're fully attentive, then you'll know from their response. We'll talk about that this afternoon, what should happen next. It's their agenda, as someone said. There are things specifically that you'd like to see done, but if they go off in other areas, obviously those are the areas that have concern for them. If there are areas that are not important to you, but important to them, then maybe you've got to listen to them. Maybe there's a way in which you bring them back, but you will know that by the full attention that you give them. And that has to do with the next one. Put a star beside it. It's so important. Listening. Do we really listen to them? Do we have empathy? Some of us have sympathy, but we don't have empathy. The difference between content and feeling. The difference between head knowledge and heart knowledge. I say things from my head and from my voice, from that angle of it. That's only sympathy. Talking about empathy. We'll talk about that in a few moments. Communicating understanding. Would you just circle the word communicating? Because sometimes we as counselors do understand where people are coming from, but we don't verbalize that we do understand. We don't communicate that. If we don't communicate, if we somehow aren't encouraging them, yes, I hear where you're coming from, I understand that, or maybe reframing it, so that somehow by the way in which we respond, they will get the message, hey, this guy's tuned into what I'm talking about. It's important for us to communicate that we understand where they're coming from. We have to be honest as well, and if we don't understand, we have to say so and not let them presume that we're with them all the way if we are not. Respect for people, I've already talked about that. But can you give yourself, are you scoring yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? What would you give yourself as it relates to respect for people? Can you really give yourself a 7 or an 8? Yes, regardless of why they're in my office or what they've done or background or my knowledge of their past career, that I have respect for them as individuals? Can I really come with that kind of unbiased attention to them? Am I assertive without being aggressive? Some of us come into counseling situations and we come in such a way that the person is intimidated. There are areas indeed in which we have to be assertive, but to be aggressive, sometimes in the way in which I watch people doing their counseling, the control is so strong that the person doesn't feel comfortable to be able to share some of the things that they're perhaps ashamed about. I've seen people who have been aggressive, and aggressive people always remind me of a bulldozer, that plows through everything, and when you look back it's all lovely and neat and clean, but it's also everything's dead. Nothing lives behind the bulldozer. Some of us are like this with relationships. We come in, we are the authority. In the process, people die, go limp, lose any self-value that they have. It's important too in self-revealing to acknowledge the fact that we too are human. We're not perfect. We are not the last word. An acknowledgement of our finitude. And straight talk. We'll talk about that this afternoon. Getting down to the areas of concern. You'll notice, I think, in the video that there very little time is taken in the trade talk. Perhaps in the connecting, as you get to know people. But then get to the issues that bring them there, so that the length of time they're with you is good quality time. And please, the word immediacy, especially if you're working on a report as to what you're going to do, your 3D report or whatever kind of reporting system you're using in your counseling, and you have specific ways in which you're hoping this counseling session will go. Therefore, you have a mindset, and in the process of that, they come up with something else, a hidden agenda that you weren't ready for. And while we'll talk about that another day, is that being fair? I'm saying now that it has to be immediacy. If they have brought to the surface areas of concern that perhaps you weren't aware of and you weren't considering talking about today, but they're obviously very important to them, then I feel that ought to be dealt with and get it out of the way so that you can move into other areas. Some of us, and some of our counseling at times, I think, are procrastinators. Sometimes because of our insecurity, we're not sure what to do. Well, we won't talk about that today. And really what we're basically saying, I haven't a clue what you're saying, or I'll have to read 3 more books, kind of. Now let's look at the video, and I apologize if this isn't working very well. It's very fuzzy, hazy. And met him before, you'll notice he's telling them who he is. He wants to find out who they are so that he can do an assessment. You can do an assessment until you've done the connecting. He was doing a fair bit of connecting there. What was happening? Tell us about it. What did you get? What was her main concern? What was she? Yeah. How did Major Piro deal with that? How was he bringing this out? Did you notice the questions he was asking or the tack that he was taking? Did you notice how long it took before finally they talked about a daughter? important that we make sure that they have ample time to tell the background, because you could easily be making an assessment before you were really connected with them, if you thought they were just the two of them. What else came out when you talked about background? Some of the things you heard about background that are terribly important to know for connecting. Both married before. She's an only child, and he isn't. What else? Some of the other things. Alcoholic father. Check your notes if you need to, but what are some of the other things?
Work level.
Hmm?
Work level.
The work level. What do you mean by the work level?
A lower grade in the sense work.
What was his work? What did he do? He's a shoe factory. What did she do? Lab technician. So what would that? What's your assessment there, John?
Well, could be conflict there.
Could be conflict because what? Poor self-image. Pays probably higher. So she felt that she was maybe keeping the family together financially. That made him feel like he was a second-class citizen. What else would you pick up if you were sitting in Major Piro's place?
A limited idea of what the father's position was in the family. He knew what the mother's position was looking after the children. He wasn't too sure what the father's position was. He had to have the experience of growing up with a father.
So how would this affect how he was maybe feeling today or reacting to a family situation? He was neglected, therefore what else? What came out because he felt neglected? How did that have to do with the confrontation of last weekend? Wouldn't know how to deal with it? There were other things. That's right, he wanted to have what he couldn't have. What other things were we learning? Always listen.
He wanted to have what he didn't have, and he didn't want to be the one who gave it. He wanted his wife, who wasn't the child's mother. He wanted her to give it.
Interesting you say she wasn't the child's mother. Did you pick up something he did say?
And that your mother,
That's right. He said to her, "You're the mother." I don't, you know. So what was that saying? What do you think that was saying? What were you reading into that?
mother's role.
That was the mother's role. What else were you reading into it? There was something else there. Passing the responsibility off to her. But he did say, "I did help with the dishes. You know, I drove them back and forth." That was what he had said. I helped with the dishes, or I offered to help with the dishes. He felt that he had done his share. That she felt the ownership, because he felt the ownership. You ought to feel you're her mother. I'm her father. You married me, therefore you're her mother. She's your daughter.
I think she's jealous of the daughter's role in the father's life, but she probably feels embarrassed as a woman saying, "I'm jealous of your relationship with
Now,
your
you'd put a
child."
hook on that, wouldn't you? Because that's your assumption. You know, you don't know if that's true or not. You're putting lots of hooks, and that's what you have to do, is ask yourself all those questions, rather than coming to a decision. She's jealous.
Well, she did say that she felt like that was your intention because of the daughter.
What I'm saying is there could be something undermining that, but that's not necessarily the bottom line. That's what you're hearing. Certainly, you're quite right. That is what you're hearing. Did you notice anything about the way in which Major Piro was leading the questions toward the root of the problem? What else? Do you notice how he was giving them some hints as to what they maybe were saying? Did you notice, for instance, that he said, well, how does that make you feel? And there was a long pause. So what did he do? Give them time to assess their feelings, but even went further than that. He suggested, "Are you feeling?" And then she said, "Well, yes." And then at one time she, "Yes." You notice that? He was giving them out. He was giving her multiple choices there of things she could have said, "No, oh no. Surely you've done that. Hopefully you have." You give them, if they're not feeling comfortable, or they can't express it, or they can't catch on to a word, then you give them a few suggestions and gives them opportunity. What else was he doing? What else did you notice that he was doing to bring them out?
He was getting them used to think about how the other person was feeling also.
Did you notice the space there? How he had them sitting? You notice anything about that? Pardon? They weren't sitting together. Why? Not only because they were mad at each other, but remember, you were in charge of the counseling session. You're the one that sets up the chairs. You've got the scenario ready before they arrive. Why do you want them spaced like that? Although he gave them the opportunity, and I think you'll notice in one of the others that they did sit together. But what is the value of having them sit like that? Facing each other. Why? So they can what? See each other, watch reactions, see each other's reactions. If they're if they're sitting together, who is it that sees all the facial reactions then? Only the counselor, and it's important for them to see what effect those words are having on each other. Yes, indeed. When did you get eye contact? When there was confrontation. Wow, they whip around the head then. It doesn't take them long to look. What about body language? What did you notice about body language? It's important to assess when you're doing connecting. You want to know how comfortable they are. Yeah?
They seem to be very uncomfortable, I'm sure.
How did you feel? Why? What made you say? What made you say that?
I think they're not quite sure what the other person is going to say and whether they can defend their own position.
What gives you that feeling? What about their body language gives you that?
Well, the girl didn't look at her husband too often.
And
she was all putting out with her hair and her
did you know, when did she tend to look away? She looked right away. When something against her, what did you think she was feeling? What did you think she was thinking? Resentment? Some other words? Which you looked away. Disgust? Guilt? Embarrassed? Interesting.
She had her back to her most of the time as well.
What would...
Had her arm over as a closed position, whereas he had his legs in a kind of an open position.
At times.
Yeah.
What do you think? Did you notice how he was going like this? I mean, perhaps meaning what? Don't be quick in your judgment. Well, what would be your assessment of that be? Frustration? Impatience? Threatened? What would you notice about Major Pirro? What are some of the things you'd note about him that you'd want to maybe take note of as a counselor that are important for us to remember when we're dealing with people? Pardon? Very patient? That's right. That kind of space. Therefore, he was indicating what? What did that say to you?
He wasn't on either one side. He was
Bringing a balance? Impartial?
He had the same posture as the gentleman who was talking to.
What would that mean? What did you take from that? Was the inference of that?
Well, I don't know, maybe on the same level as them.
As the man? Do you think, as we talk very often, who was the draggee? Who do you think was the draggee? Did you think it was the man? What was your assessment? Did you feel that maybe she had made the appointment and she was trying to get some sense of it and he didn't want to be there?
Oh, yeah.
But I was glad when Carol did eventually bring her in. I felt that it seemed to be he was doing a lot of the talking. It seemed unbalanced.
Perhaps because Major Pirro was aware of the fact that she had made the appointment and that she had wanted him to come, and therefore he was, why would he maybe decide to start with him?
Well, sure. That's what I was going to ask. I wondered if that came out and I missed it. Who had...
I don't think it came out that she had made the appointment. These people were role-playing, incidentally. They're from the Pathway Players, but it was an actual case taken from the file and not from an officer file. And it was taken from one of the workshops in Cape that we were involved with, and we have permission from that couple to be using that.
He had control of the conversation, and even though they had a time of argument, he didn't want to step in.
He didn't have a desk in front of me.
Didn't have a desk? What is the fear of having a desk in front of us, Anne?
So
Official, authority, intimidating, barriers, separation, the opportunity for a very restful looking room with some plants and easy chairs, room for both, and both of them were on a love seat so they could move around, and that's important because then you can watch the body language and they have room to express themselves through body language.
Did you feel that a little thing was made into a big thing because of the relationship?
Did you?
I didn't.
That if their relationship had been good, you mean the sleepover wouldn't have been a problem at all. So you'll notice, well, we didn't go into it, but we're not, at times, you see, you could say, okay, let's talk about the sleepover, and it's not the sleepover that is the problem at all. What are the areas? Yes, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, I don't think the question about the big marriage twice, how long been married? Really get you thinking about time spent now.
What was interesting about the wedding? And what was her response to that? She looked thrilled about that. And what was the accusation she made? I didn't have to take anything. Lily White. And of course there would be those of us who, if we're not careful, would say, and good for you, my dear. Which would be giving a bias. Yes, Joe?
So she said, you didn't tell me.
Ah, yeah. Well, and what he didn't matter. You know, that kind of thing. All right, let's try to do a bit of an assessment here. What do you think is going to be? How are you going to handle this? What do you think is the problem here? Someone said jealousy. No communication. Lack of communication. Threat of the daughter. It's interesting. I can't recall if we took the tape long enough for them to be able to say that when they lived together, Shelley wasn't with them. They were on their own. Shelley was with her mother, but he was very unhappy with the way Shelley was being treated with her mother. So then, therefore, when they got married, Shelley came and lived with them. And what else happened when Shelley came to live with them? They got married, and what happened? The marriage seemed to go down the tube, didn't it? So what else are we having to look into there?
She's not seems to be under a lot of stress because of all the responsibilities she knows. You know, the job, the home, the
Yes, and she calls it a career. A housewife. You know, she's a housewife, not just a wife. A housewife, which implies all the duties of wifing that are not wifely duties, but house duties. And that he doesn't seem to do a great deal.
She's not getting as much attention.
As she had before.
Was to help prepare for when they enter the marriage relationship. You can see that a year prior, everything was hunky-dory.
And that would be one of the things that you want to put on your, when you were putting your assessment, things you, as the counselor, you'd want to maybe probe next time round.
I didn't hear from the conversation whether she had any children.
No, she
from the
didn't.
previous marriage.
No.
And therefore, it would be very difficult to enter into the marriage and all of a sudden have a 10-year-old daughter which restricts your activity.
Privacy. Time we had together. Now there's more clothes. A 10-year-old has a lot more clothes and to wash, and iron, a house to care for, meals to cook. We can maybe just grab a sandwich, but you know, if she's diet conscious with a 10-year-old, well, we've got to make sure Shelley gets a good meal. Those kinds of things.
They're not, it's an interference in their married life that has brought this stuff, that they're not prepared to handle.
An interference in their marriage, which they're not prepared to handle.
a lot more commitment to having a marriage after that.
Yeah, a marriage and a daughter means commitment. The future is locked in a very different way than it was when we were just together. Well, that gives you some idea from the video as to the importance of connecting the things we hear. We'll go on with our another world, or whatever, the day in the life of another world. I think it's after. That's all for my kids. I got one daughter getting married and another boy I'm trying to sell off, so for goodness sake, I need all the help I can get. That's called moonlighting, Bill. Oh, give you mine for two. There's a few little overheads I'm going to put on the board rather than frantically trying to write them down. They're over there, and you can get them on your way out. Like the one I'm going to. Oh, you were telling me to start at 3:15. It's a good job what's happening soon is happening soon. Sure tell I'm not two of us meet in Scarborough, we meet on a level. I think this is an important thing to remember when we're talking to people, that we don't just hear, that we listen. And I thought that was a good quote, and it's one of the ones that you'll find over there. A good quote to remember, that you hear to help yourself. You listen to help other people. Hearing is gaining information for me, determined by what's going on inside of me. Listening is so that I can help other people to determine what's going on inside of them. Would you please be sensitive to the fact that when people walk into our counseling office, that we have to be listeners. We've got to be attentive listeners. We've got to be good listeners. As someone said after the session this morning, listening to Len Piero, isn't he profound with the way he goes, mm-hmm. I used to tease Len about this because we've done a number of these together. Mm-hmm. But it is important that we have that kind of empathy toward people. We're going to be saying just a few things about empathy, and it's on page 8 in the notes. You don't necessarily have to turn to it, but I think it's important for us to have that quote from Powell. Empathy is asking, what's it like to be you? What's it like to be you? It helps us with the assessing. If we can somehow have this mindset and endeavor to find out where people are coming from. What's it like to be you? Getting inside the skin of another. Importantly, oh yes, I hear you. And that's the response that people will get from us if we are listening. If we are really listening to what they're saying, they will know by the responses that come forth from us if we're really hearing them or not. Another one that I like very much, empathetic skill is demonstrating to someone that you understand their attitude, which is going beyond their words, their attitude with which they're handling life, their views, their feelings, that you have compassion. Simply put, says Gurney, empathetic skill means showing understanding. Showing understanding. I want you to listen for a few minutes and see if you can understand. And I'm not being facetious when I say that. I don't know how many of you have studied Kennedy's book, but I'd like you to just close your books for a few moments and listen. Do some attentive listening. Some empathetic listening. Stuart Kennedy has written this book, The Unutterable Beauty. He was a First War chaplain, military chaplain, and it was his sad duty, and indeed it was his ministry, during the First World War, to move around, especially in the greater London area in England, and inform families, I'm sorry to tell you that your son has been killed in action on the European front, and he will not be returning home. A very difficult task, those of us who have done any work with grieving. And he has written this poem from the perspective of this mother that has just lost her son. And I'd like you to all just listen to it, and I'll close the doors so that we have no interruptions, because I want to see if we are really listening. And I say that specifically for my dear friend. And we'll open it again after. Now they're having a conversation. Are you comfortable, Harold? Twice. What do you hear this mother saying? And what do you hear? It's written as though the mother were herself here telling the story. Remember, she's just lost her son. She's just been told he won't be returning home. And this is what it's entitled. I know not where they've laid him. I wouldn't mind if I only knew the spot where they've laid my lad. If I could see where they've buried him, it wouldn't be half so bad. But they do say some's not buried at all, left to the maggots and flies, rotting out there in that no man's land. Just where they fall, they lie. The preacher says it makes no odds, because the soul of the lad goes on. His spirit is gone to his God. He says, wherever the body's gone. But the preacher's never had a child. He's a man, not a woman's seed. How can he know what a woman feels and what it can mean to me? For my boy's body were mine, my own. I bore it in bitter pain. Bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh lies and rots in the rain. Preacher's never suckled a child, nor broken his nights of rest to hush it to sleep in his aching arms while it drew life from his breast. He's never watched a sick child's bed, nor seen it fighting for life. A man don't know what a mother knows. He leaves all that to his wife. I remember the chapter the preacher read when our little Jenny died. And I was feeling as I'm feeling now, with this emptiness inside. Thou fool, it said, thou fool, to ask, and how do the dead arise? What is the body they shall wear up there in God's paradise? I may be a fool, but that's just it. That's just what I want to know. What is the body my boy shall wear, and how does that body grow? I reckon it's how that scripture piece were writ by a single man that never knew what a body costs, and I don't see how they can. And I'd like to know just where it's laid, that body my body bore. And I'd like to know who'll mother him now out there on that other shore. Who'll be bearing the mother's part in making your body, boy? Who'll be having the mother's pain and feeling the mother's joy? God? Is it you? Then bow you down and hark to a mother's prayer. Don't keep it all to yourself, good Lord. Give this old mother a share. Give me a share of the travail pain of my own son's second birth. Double the pain if you double the joy that a mother feels on earth. Give me the sorrow and not the joy, if that's to be your will. Give me the labor and not the pride. But make me his mother. Now what do you hear? Write down some of the things we hear. Bitterness. Yes. Something else you heard. Anguish. Pain. Lack of understanding, so loneliness. Lonely. Frustration. You'll have to do a little faster because we're just whipping it down. Frustration, loneliness. Yes. Love, yes. All the way through it was the link. And remember, when you're really listening to people, sometimes all we hear is the anger and the hurt and the loneliness. And all the time we have to realize that down there, very often it's the love. They don't know how to express it. It's done in a multiple fashion. Regret. Some other things. Loss. Empty. And she even said that word when the little Jenny died. I feel now like I did then, empty. Separation. Betrayal. Something else that kept coming through all the time. Anger, yes. Please, when you're counseling with people, remember those of you who are counseling because of grief, how important it is that somehow you've got to bring out of them the catharsis. You've got to bring out that cycle of anger so that that too can be expressed. Until the anger is there, you can't get to the root of a lot of things. It might be covering up a lot of things. Yes, questioning. That's right. Yes, and any other words for the unknown? Doubts, fears, uncertainty. Yes. Something else you heard.
There was nothing she could do.
Helplessness.
Yeah,
She was helpless. That she couldn't go. Anything else?
Jealousy that somebody else would take place when God was taking care.
Perhaps. Mm-hmm. Why is he with you? Why isn't he with me? Is mine? Jealousy.
I think there's anger at God, but also an instrument.
Oh, yes, yes. I think you're right. You know, I would, perhaps she was a Catholic and there was a priest and he was not only a man, but he was a single man. He doesn't even know what it is like to be a father and lose a child. She was very angry. And that's why we have to be very careful, don't we, in our counseling, that we don't use trite expressions or phrases or things that we think people want to hear or that we think they ought to hear. You know, like that he's gone to be with his God. It doesn't matter about the body. He's not there. Don't talk to me like that. You know, I'm sure you've heard that, and so you ought to. It's all part of the pain. Anything else?
What for Catholics and those other children, that's how God feels when you go away from him and you feel the loss of your son.
And what do you think if you said to that to her? Wonder what she would say. It depends entirely, I guess, on who said it to her as to what her response would be. Don't tell me how anyone else feels.
I don't think she's ready to hear like, yeah.
Allow her to own those feelings. Anything else? Anything else? What did you feel? What did you feel when I read it? What was the feeling you had? Sad? What would you have felt? Lonely? Dream? Yeah. Anguish? You felt pain? What did you feel? Tragedy? Loss? And you were?
Well, it's a time of war. This was a tragedy. And sometimes you think that is happening to other people.
But not affecting us. Anybody else? Hopelessness? Yes. You
I
felt.
was thinking, how would I feel?
Okay. How did you feel when you even heard it?
Like, I think I could sympathize with her, but like if that was me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and put myself in her place.
Can any of us really?
I don't.
You know, I think of all the people that I counseled in grief counseling, but you know, a lot of that flies out the window when my father dies. You know, and I'm not rational. I really am not. You know, I need someone there for me. I finally was doing so poorly with it. I finally phoned one of my cousins who's an officer and said, Bob, if I can get a couple of days up at Jackson Point, can you come and help me process my grief? I am not doing well. At the drop of a hat, I burst into tears. I can't sleep. I wake up in the night and I'm pacing the floor. I've got to get through this because I've got to get on with my life. And until I was prepared to do that, I couldn't. And I'm grateful for the fact that we roamed these grounds for 2.5 days, processing my grief. And very important. Very important. I guess what I was wanting to bring into focus, folks, was that if we can bring up these kind of things that I was just listening to a woman who wasn't even here in a book, then how much more we ought to be sensitive to how people are feeling who are sitting in the same room with us. To be able to hear that and somehow be a catalyst of that and say, yes, there's the pain, there's the anger, there's the loneliness. What would you want him to do? If I had said to her, Mrs. Smith, I'd be grateful if you'd come and just sit here and tell these folks about the circumstances and situations of the loss of your son. What would you have done? Anybody? What would you have done? Put your arms around her. Cried with her. You've expressed in a wide variety of ways what is talked about on page 8 of your notes about empathy, accurate empathy, being there as people need us, when they need us, how they need us. On page 9, just want to touch base on a couple of things that are in the notes that I think are important. Confidentiality and your note-taking. I don't know if you have a procedure that is a territorial procedure relating to note-taking of when you're dealing with people, but the basic one that we use is relating to this is found, I think, on page 10. We call it the 3P, just for the sake of it. And for those of you who are officers here and others as well, I should state that no records are made of any counseling that is done at any time with officers, so that's not on file anywhere. But if we're teaching this as a skill, a counseling skill to officers who are doing some counseling, that is a very simple thing. One, Prepare, circle the word, what are you doing to get yourself ready for that session? You might want to write down a few things that I have written in my book that are reminders to me as I'm getting ready, my preparation for any counseling session. It always starts with the word prayer. It doesn't matter to me if I have 8 sessions a day, which of course I won't because that's much too heavy, but I would pray for each. I don't pray at the beginning of the day that the Lord will bless everyone that comes through this place, but I pray for each. You've got to make sure that there's time between so that you have that time to settle yourself in and be available to them as individuals. Secondly, getting your material ready, if you're going to be suggesting some material that they're going to be taking home that you're wanting them to read or to peruse. And very often in the counseling we're using the systems approach, which means that they have some things they have to do, and then when they come back the next time, you ask them which of them they've done and how they felt about doing it. That kind of preparation, if it's stuff that has to be mimeographed, you make sure that there's going to be 40 people, you have 40 pieces of paper. Make sure that the place is ready, okay? If there does happen to be a desk in the room, that is cleared so that they're not trouble with clutter. Making sure that the chairs are situated in such a way that if there is a clock in the room, you're the one that sees it and you can glance at it without them noticing, so that you're not going to have to look at a watch if everything is being done by time. Those kinds of things. Making sure that there are no distractions. No distractions. You've got to make sure that that's very important, because anything can do it. If you have a telephone, make sure that someone out there is either turning it off or that you are taking off the hook. And if you happen to live in a province that does not appreciate that, then try to figure out some place where you can phone where it will ring and just take it off, or do something so that nothing will ruin a counseling session faster than the ring of the phone, because just the answering of it breaks the train of thought. You might also, in that one, want to do your own personal assessment of what you hope might happen. What do I want to accomplish in this session? What do I want to accomplish? They might come with hidden agendas. You're not sure what they're going to reveal, but you might have 5 or 6 specific questions or directions you want to go in. So those would be the kind of things that you would write down there under that pot when it talks about the preparation. Then the process. The process. Well, you notice that I've said that this is done after they've gone, before you start anything else, before you pick up the phone or do anything that has to be done. After the session, write in what happened. Will you please circle the word content? The content level, the content issues, and secondly, the process issues. What were the things you talked about, and how does that enter into the overall working of the entire counseling sessions? All of them, 6 or 8 or wherever they are. Where does it fit into what you're doing? So that's the 2 things, the content level and the process level. What happened here today, and how does that fit in with overall what I'm endeavoring to do with them? You want to ask yourself, what was said? Who said it? How did they say it? Those kinds of things. Was it said in anger? Did you have to bring it out of them? Was it easy for them to express it? Was it difficult? You also will want, maybe there, for instance, in the one that Len was doing, to have a reminder on your raw data, the background stuff, so you don't have to say to them, now I can't remember, did you have 2 or 3 sisters, and I can't remember, did you tell me who you were married to? Those kind of things. If they told you before, it's a clear indication this guy's not all together with it. He's not concentrating. You want to write that down. If you have to refer to it before they come in, or even have it with you, for some reason, I don't do that, but some people do some writing while they're there. I'm not one of those that believe in that. I think it's disconcerting and has a wide variety of other ramifications and side effects. But anything with background that they've given you should be written in that. And then the prediction. The prediction is done as you're getting ready for the next session. And maybe I have done it very often right after that session. Now, if we've got that far, I see us going there the next time around. Okay. Depends on how often your sessions are. Any questions about that? Now, that's just a suggestion, and it's a very simple one. The only suggestion I have, which is rather crucial, is that anything like that has to be kept locked. Okay, put away. And I'll say it one more time, and that's not, if we're doing counseling with officers, no record at any time is kept, And officers that I'm contracting with will know that. Therefore, if I have to refresh my memory, I prefer to refresh my memory than for them to know that I'm keeping any kind of notes that would be seen by anybody. Part of the confidentiality of our particular appointment.
This is a comment that some of us, I know that in the prison, you know, like, I don't think I can even find a place that is right. It's not a sort of setting. Counseling?
You don't have even a place you can go to counsel them?
Well, not like you described.
Not an ideal setting. But I'm sure that maybe you've learned to do it through the years over coffee or somewhere or other, or maybe I don't know nothing but even your situation. That's right. That's right. Methods that are not only best for you but agreeable to the institution or wherever you are. I'm sure that's right. And that's very difficult, I'm sure, to do counseling if you haven't got a place to do it. Having said that, well, you wouldn't even find that in a prison, I guess, but I find that a lot of good counseling is done in a restaurant or a coffee shop because a wide variety of reasons. One of them is that people, if I feel it could get out of control, that will always be a good control area. And also it's very public and people feel quite comfortable. There's a lot of noise going around. Interesting what can happen in a restaurant. All those kind of situations. On the page 11 in the danger areas, there are only two that I wanted to bring to your attention. There will be it's in the middle of the page. There will be times when certain issues will violate certain of the counselor's cherished values. For instance, if the counselor in the situation that we were looking at this morning was dead opposed to divorce, or certainly was very judgmental about this whole business. What, you mean to say that the two of you actually lived together for a year before you were married? You know, when I think, Bessie, of your background, how could you do that? That won't be helpful. You know? And in the wide variety of moral situations that you must be faced with, and I knew something of that when I first came home from overseas and was doing counseling in Miracle Valley. And I must admit that I came from a mission field that in comparison to Miracle Valley was very cloistered. And if some of those men knew how shocked I was when they told me some of the lifestyles that they had come from, I tell you, it was just unbelievable for me in that area of readjustment to the Western world. There were days when I wanted very much to go back to the Afghanistan border where I knew who lived with who. You know, so if you have those difficulties, you have to deal with them. If they in any way see that you're being judgmental, you're pulling back, and it's done by body language or by circumstances, or even by the way in which you ask questions, then you can't be helpful to them. If there are any questions you have to ask me regarding that you want to talk to me about later, feel free to do so. But that's not an easy one to deal with when we come. Some of us come from very circumspect, rather background. It's rather difficult at times. The next one down is equally important. Put a star beside it. To intervene prematurely, making a diagnosis before all the facts have been shared. Especially if you call yourself a semi-professional, you're doing this all the time, and I know that. That's not the first time I've heard that story. It's this, and this, and you try to shortcut it. And so instead of giving them opportunity, the therapy of them sharing with you their problem, their difficulty, their life, and their background, you say, I bet I can tell you without you even going any further. You know? And then they say, you're right, Major. And you think they think, isn't that marvelous? This man's a mind reader. But really what's happening is that the opportunity of sharing with you, at times, all the sludge of their life that sometimes has to get out. Certainly, those of us who have recent days have been doing any work with the adult victim of child abuse, and there are 6 of us in headquarters that have been privileged to take some more training in helping adult victims of child abuse. And in our training, the facilitator is saying, as difficult as it is for you, it's important for them to tell the story. If they've perhaps they haven't, and they have to tell the story. And I know that's hard for you to try and pull that out of them, but in the various videos that we have had to watch, which are very painful to watch, as a facilitator brings that story out and brings out the detail so that it can be dealt with. They put it under for so long. Very, very difficult. Those kinds of things. So we can't intervene prematurely, or a negative coalition would only happen when you've got your you're dealing with two people, but where they argue endlessly. No, my dear, it wasn't last year, it was a year before, and it was when you were out of town. You don't even know anything about it because the kids weren't there. No, it wasn't. I was there. I know. No, you weren't. You sit back and you're a spectator, and you may as well be going outside and having a cup of coffee. If you allow that to happen, that negative coalition. Now, there is a time, and you'll notice it in the video this afternoon, there's a time when you want them to talk back and forth, because then you get a real handle on who is the dragee, who is the dragger, who has the power, who doesn't have the power, who's trying to orchestrate this, and who sits back and lets it happen, all of those kinds of things. All right. It's important too when you're doing your assessing, and this isn't in your notes, but just look at it for a moment. And Len was getting at this. None of this is new to you, but a reminder to you that when you're doing your bridging, when you're endeavoring to connect with the couple and you're doing an assessment, you cannot do an assessment without this kind of background. So you've got to ask the questions. Tell me something about your background. And Len did it very nicely, and they felt very comfortable once they were starting to connect, and they talked about their background, and then they got closer and closer to him, and they talked not only about being married before, but also now the child, those kinds of things. The roots that they had will affect their attitudes and their beliefs. The roles that they played and that other people played will indeed affect their behaviors, their perceptions, and their choices. The rules that they had to live by, that they have come from, affect those things on the right-hand side. The kind of rituals that were a part of their family are very often some of the areas of real concern that they have. What I've lived with, what I think was right, what I was told was right, what I assumed was right, the kind of relationships that they've been able to have, resources that they had within the community, within the family, within their church or whatever, that made them into the kind of people or helped them to make the kind of decisions they made or didn't make, and how effective religion was. And from these, obviously, are the areas that relate to their personality and their temperament. And you will hear this coming out when you take the opportunity of allowing them to share these with you. Those are really important things. And I think, yes, we've got they're over there. The roots, the roles, the rules, the rituals, the relationships, the resources, the religion. That's what you want to be hearing. And if you are really listening, if you're doing attentive listening, from pulling this out from them in your counseling session, you will hear this. You will hear this. You ask the questions relating to that, and you're going to get the answers relating to that. And that helps you to make the assessments that you want to make. On the next page, we've given you what we call the awareness wheel. These are 5 areas that you're wanting to tap into as it relates to people. What are they sensing? Okay, it's on page 13. That's right. What are they sensing? What are they thinking? Down at the bottom. See? What are they feeling? What do they want to do? What are their intentions? And what are their actions? What are they doing? It's always interesting to me to sort of draw your own where you come from. This changes with every situation. And we could do this with the situation. See, in the middle there it says the issue, whatever the situation is, whatever the circumstance. Then you think different things, you sense different things, you feel different things you want to do. With this woman that we've just been talking about, we sensed her loss, her pain, her suffering. What she was thinking she was very much alone, that nobody was there to help her. She was feeling bereft. She was feeling that here she was, and that there wasn't anyone to comfort her. What she wanted to do, I think if you were here and you were to ask her, she'd possibly want to go over to that no man's land, wherever it was, and keep hunting till she found her boy. And if she had no utensils, she'd dig a hole in the ground and bury him herself, or somehow or other carry him home or do something. And what was she doing? She was doing very little because he was so far away. Now this awareness wheel helps you to find out where people are. As an overall, you can look at yourself. How do you generally respond to things and people? I very often do this in some of the workshops, and we're not going to do the whole thing today, but I'll sort of tell you where I see myself. I'm going to, if Marion were here, and unfortunately she's not here today, she will tell you as she sees me. That's why she's not here today. That's not true. Not true. But I think maybe because I spent so many years as a missionary and had to live in a number of cultures and learn some other languages, and lived with Hindus and Buddhists and Muslims and Parsis, fire worshippers, I think I can sense much easier because of culture that I've had to live in, that this is acceptable or that's not acceptable or that's Christian or that's not Christian. Those sensing more so than men, I think, really do. I don't think I'm the world's greatest thinker. You'll have to hunt for a long time in any of the libraries in the next 50 years to find the books written by Bill Ratcliffe. There possibly be more by Bram Pilsen. Feelings. I think I feel when people are hurting, and I can become very emotional with that. My intentions. I'm not really one of those that procrastinates. A lot of things I want to do and I never get done. I really am a firm believer in time management, so I try to put that into practice in my daily life. My problem is that I'm the world's greatest doer. I don't need a lot of sleep. I can go on 5 or 6 hours. I keep going and going and going and going and doing and doing and doing and doing. And you can see what my real problem is, can't you? Because I'm the world's greatest doer, the world's poorest thinker. I usually have to do things more than once to get it done because I didn't think it through. As Miriam would say, if you think it through, you wouldn't have to do it twice. Because you didn't think it through, you're having to go back and do it again. The beautiful thing is that I'm married to a gal who, I think because maybe her Scottish background or something, she thinks things through. Therefore, she doesn't have to do it quite so much. Interesting. Take a moment there on the next page. Draw your own. Be brave. And realizing, of course, that would differ with every situation. But overall, as a general attitude of how you approach things, can you sense how people are feeling? Then draw it quite large. Do you think things through? Then draw it even larger than mine. Can you feel how people are expressing themselves? What about the whole business of what you want to do? Procrastination in there. What about doing it? Take a moment. Draw your own. When you get home, if you happen to be married, ask your spouse to draw yours on the other side. But please don't fight, because I have no time to talk to any more people in counseling sessions. If you're interested in this theory, it's called Talking Together. It's one of Millard's books. And it's an excellent thing. I very often use it when I'm doing personal counseling as well. Draw your own. How do you see yourself? What are your good points? What are the things that maybe need attention? You don't even have to be an artist. You're not wrong because you're thinking about yourself as you see yourself. Well, it is hard to do in yourself, but it's as you see yourself.
What exactly do you mean?
Wanting the things I want to do, my intentions. Intention. If you're sitting next to somebody that knows you and you've got the courage, ask them to draw you.
My friend back here said it's hard to be humble.
It's hard to be humble, I know. The whole process of that is a very useful tool, the awareness wheel, and it's used an awful lot. If you're interested in the book, it's up in front. I'm going to move along in the interest of time. Page 14, up at the top of page 14, reminds us that we have a choice between focusing on the issue or the relationship. And in the case model, and I would think in all counseling that you would be doing, you would want to zero in on the relationship and not the content. So you want to circle the word relationship. What's happening to this person? What's happening to these people? Because of this situation, because of these circumstances, because of where they find themselves, what's happening to them? Okay, that's important to get beyond the content into the process. And that's basically what's called the systems approach, and that's what we've been finding most effective. The next few pages have a considerable amount to do with marriage counseling. I'm going to skip it, but it's there for you to use if you want to. Please turn to page 19. When you're doing assessing on page 19, when you're doing assessing, those questions up at the top are very important for you to be asking yourself. Why have they come? Just bracket those. Do you know, after you've had your first session, if you still don't know why they've come, somewhere along the line, somewhere you haven't been listening, or they haven't been sharing, or it hasn't been an open session, you still don't know really why they're here. Do they know why they're here, and do you know? So this is specifically for you. Why have they come? Why have they come now? Okay? What are the answers to that? If Len were writing down his 3P form, why have they come? They've come because what? That couple that we're looking at this morning. Why have they come? They've got a problem, but what is it? Yeah? That their marriage is in trouble. Why have they come now? Because of the urgency was what? You want to write it down. You want to be specific. What really was the thing that blew the whole works and they finally came? It was a sleepover. Okay? Great. So you want to get beyond the sleepover, which would just be the content. You want to get into the relationship. Why have they come? Why have they come now? You want to write that down. And why have they come to you? I think I started the tape before Len had said, why did you choose me? Or maybe he starts it in the second session, why did you choose me? And she said, we were recommended to you because you helped somebody, a friend of ours, and so they said they could come to you. And that was why they chose you. Do you know that? Do you know the reason why they've come to you? If you're dealing in a prison situation, there's possibly nobody else. And it might be they've come to you because it's a good way of getting out of something else. All those exterior reasons or periphery reasons. Okay. You wouldn't necessarily have to do this, but look at the next questions. They're important for us. What we're basically doing is questioning on ourselves, do we know what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing, which is part of the assessment. Is there a reluctant person? Who do you think is a reluctant person in the scenario we had this morning? The husband? I see. Do you know how long the problem has existed? Ever since their marriage, in this particular case. What are the goals of each spouse? We really haven't got to that yet, except that the overall goals would be to sort of try to live together. What's the best thing that could happen? What's the best thing that could happen? All right, that they live happily ever after with the music. Right. What's the worst thing that could happen? Falls apart. Now that's the reality of your counseling, and you can't live in fantasy land. Dealing with a referral that an officer made of some folk who were having some real difficult troubles, and he didn't quite know how to handle it, so he referred them to me. And speaking to the husband, I said something to the effect that if things don't get any better, I can see you separating. And she said to me, "How could you say that?" That's reality. I'm here to bring focus into this thing. Folks, if things don't improve, if you don't work I've given you 2 or 3 things to do. I say we can come back and we'll talk about how you did them. You didn't do them. If things don't improve, it's going to go down the tube. That's the honesty of it. I'm not here to just say, well, we'll just pray about it and leave it with the Lord. That's not fair. That's not, to be honest, that's not the reality. That's not bringing it into focus. So these are the kind of questions you want to make sure that you have well established in your mind. On that next page, we're giving you the 2 things that are important. 1, the process goals, and 2, the outcome goals. What are the things that you're going to have to work through? Like a sleepover is one of the process goals. Shelley coming into their house after they've been married. That's part of the process. Those things you're going to have to handle. But those are not the outcome goals. The outcome's got to be that when you've dealt with all of these things, that eventually they'll get to the bottom line of living together with Shelley in a house in a married state. Whatever. You might, I thought it might be helpful to you, and I'm throwing out a lot of things because you come from a wide variety of backgrounds relating to your counseling. Some of the danger areas here, negative coalition, if they don't speak. I don't know, I thought this came to my mind because of some of you who are dealing with with prisoners and they just don't want to talk about it. And they say they don't want to talk about it. They really want to get out of their cell or whatever it is, or have the opportunity to be away from everybody else. And they just won't share. Or if you're working with two people and one of them won't share and one says, or you say, Bill, how are you doing? Well, he's not doing so well because I'll tell you. And she answers, excuse me, Bill. I'm going to talk to Bill, you know. So when one person is a usurper, when one seeks to take control, or a storyteller, you know, where you say things, or you ask a question and they ramble on and on. If you had said, for instance, to him, what about your father? Oh, my father. Now let me tell you about my father. He comes from Norway and he really has a bad background, and now that's not too bad, but then he starts telling you about all the wonderful things he did at Christmas, and then you should have seen him at Easter, and then when my mother and him, all those rambling on, you're not getting to it. All right? The denier, like the lady I was just referring to, who says there's nothing wrong, how would you say that? All right? Or the grand exeter. I don't know how many of you have had these and you're in the middle of something, and for some wide variety of reasons, maybe they're threatened and overly threatened, or maybe they feel that you are no longer in the middle and that you're taking sides with the other person. The other one just walks out. That's it. Bye. Bye. Can't do beautiful French, but you can't do marriage counseling with one person. Very difficult. Nor should you try, incidentally. And I've said this to people who say, well, if he won't come back, can I come back? I say, yes, you can come back, but I won't be doing marriage counseling. I'll be helping you survive, but I won't be helping your marriage, because he's got to be here. Now, if you were the reason why he walked out, if you somehow betrayed a confidence, or you were too cruel, or you were biased, or whatever it might be, then it's up to you to see that somehow or other, even if he says, no, that's it, I'm never going to come back, all right, never come back, but let's conclude it with the three of us there. Come next week and we'll just close the book. Will you do that? Most of them will. And I found that if they will come back to close the book, and most of them will, very often they will go on and you can explain some of the reasons why you said what you said. Any questions about that? On page 22, you have the three ways that we want to intervene. I think I'll conclude with this, page 22, because I want you to look at the video. When you're doing the strategy, these are the three areas that you have to do the intervention. That little circle. And they're up there as well. Feelings, what they feel. Perceptions, what they think. And behavior, what they do. Now you can link in at any one of those points, but usually we start with their feelings, then their behavior, and then their perception. But you can intervene at any of those points. But those are the three that you have to, where you have to enter into it. What are they feeling? What are they thinking? And how are they behaving? Feelings, what they feel, what they think, and how they behave. What they feel, what they think, and what they do. Those are the three areas. On page 22, it talks about the feeling. 23, it talks about the feeling level. Will you just circle it up at the top, the feeling level? Because down at the bottom there are four little dots. I don't know how I feel. I don't know how my partner feels. I don't like how I feel, and I don't like how my partner feels. And those are things that you will want to work through. The next page, 23A, is a good one, a good graph for people to sometimes be able to do. And I've given it to them, and I've said, draw a long line if you have a great deal of anger, for instance, and a short line if you just got a little, and let them express why they feel, why they've made a long line there. You've got a long line for sadness. What are you feeling sad about? You've got a short line of happiness. Isn't there anything in your life that you're happy about? What are the things that you're happy about? When did you last feel happy? Okay, I just clipped that in there because I thought it might be a good graph for you in some of the ways in which you're endeavoring to help people. Page 24, the second paragraph, talks about feelings being perceived in many ways. So will you put a bracket beside it? About how they're feeling. How they're feeling. Sometimes from the content as well as the context. From, underline it please, from tone of voice, from pace of speech, from added emphasis. You sure got that added emphasis this morning, didn't you? Facial expressions, including lack of eye contact, body language, all the way in which they're sitting, uncomfortable movements, We didn't get much foot tapping this morning, but what did we get? That's right, he was tapping his hand again. All of that has to be perceptive of that. And you'll notice that Len was doing a lot of mirroring of feelings, it seems to me, or rephrasing so that they could acknowledge. And in connection with rephrasing on that next page, I thought it's just important to remind you of the ways in which we can very often rephrase with people. Will you just look up here? I know you've got a little thing that looks like a house on the next page, and that's basically this. But someone in the counseling session sends you a message by the way in which you listen and respond, because you are the receiver. You give back the response. That gives them the opportunity to either correct or confirm, yes, that's what I mean. Do I hear you saying that? You know, yes, that's what I'm saying. It sounds to me as though you are, no, I'm not. You know, that kind of, you can use the communication cycle in a very effective way for people to confirm or correct. So down at the bottom there, if you'll just circle those two things, confirming or correcting. The thing that is important to remember, as you well know, and I'm sure you've done this before, is that you as the counselor have to read their filter. How are they feeling? What's their mood? Their reactions? Their attitudes? Because that's going to come through in the way in which they say what they say. You heard that this morning with him, sometimes the way he said it. You got his mood very quickly, and hers as well. So remember, you've got to read their filter. What's the mood with which they're saying what they're saying? What's their meaning? What's their feeling? What's their preoccupation? With a constant reminder that you too have your filter. If you're preoccupied, or you're too tired, or you're too weary, you're not hearing what they're saying. So those two little walls are very important, those two filters. And you'll see them on page, what is it? Page 25A. Those two filters are important for the counselor. And circle the words down at the bottom, the filter that you've got to be looking for as you try to help them. As you try to help them. I want to move into the videos now, and then we will finish off with ways in which we ended off after we've had a chance to look at these. Find yourself a page that you can write on so that we can do the same as before, so that we can discuss it. Yes, stand up and stretch.
Well, why weren't you here? We never met.
He does some teaching there. And I'm basically wanting you to zero in on how you bring things out of people. And so I'm going to roll it ahead. Okay, what have we learned now? What has come out of this? What did he do? What did Major Piero do here? What happened? What did you see happen? Brought them out of themselves a little more. In what area? How they're feeling. Mm-hmm. What have you learned that we didn't have before? What's your content here? Some more content that came out.
They were interested in their marriage.
That they were interested in their marriage. And what did he do that brought that about so that it didn't go downhill like it could have done? Because he's really closing off this particular session. In this one, incidentally, we're capsulizing 7 sessions. Wow. So you've got to realize that when you think he's moving ahead, it's only for the sake of this video. But what did the husband say that could have let it go downhill? We've lost something too. Wow, there she goes, right downhill. And because it was going near the end of the session, you have to get back to that, what you've lost. So what did he ask? That's right, we've gained something, let's talk about the gains. So that they are, the things that they share, the affirmation that they can give each other, he's bringing that out for both of them. Anything else? Anything else you made in a note there that you wanted to comment on?
She turned towards him more.
Yes, she was turning more towards him. But then when Major Piero was asking her how she was feeling, what did you sense then, if you're reading the body language of that? She was tense again. She was uncomfortable. Anything else? Pardon? That's right. She tended to withdraw. She really didn't want to give any more words. Why would you think she maybe wasn't wanting to give words? Because they were maybe be what? Too honest? And the honesty would have been what? Revealing? Would have been hurtful. Maybe she didn't want to hurt him. Therefore, the Major was feeding her some words. which she could, that whole business of confirming or correcting, you're feeling this, and she could have said, no, I'm not, and maybe you've had it happen, no, I'm not feeling that, but he was giving her words, and she was agreeing with them. Anything else? Yeah, other comments on that?
She was hurt from his response.
Pardon?
She was hurt from his response.
Yes, she was hurt by what he was saying. That hurt her.
Was she afraid this wasn't gonna work, afraid at that point? I didn't see it this morning, but I suddenly got the feeling that she suddenly was afraid and,
Afraid of his answers, or
afraid that this wasn't gonna work,
and that maybe if she was honest,
that it might go right down the drain and,
it could have easily gone down the drain if the counselor had let them talk, let them go home talking about all the things we've lost. That would not have been a good way to have ended that session. So he brought it back up to the positive things that bind you together. What was an interesting comment that she made when we talk about what we've got? We have Shelley. Now, if you're doing your attentive listening, that rings the bell. What does that say to you? She's not so angry towards Shelley. She's maybe more angry about him and his feelings towards her. Maybe Shelley isn't quite as much in the way. All right. Let's look at it again, unless you have another comment.
I also noticed, and I mentioned this on it, that it was, he said, we decided Shelley should stay with her mother for the first year, and then he said, I thought she should come and stay with us after we were married. So it makes you wonder how much
input she
had on the decision for Shelley to come.
Maybe he decided now Shelley's going to stay with us. Interesting, the morality of it, that while they were living together, he didn't want his daughter, but once they were married, then she could come with us.
He said he wanted a home, just go back this morning he wanted
From his
a
back.
real home.
He wanted a real home for Shelley, which he felt he didn't have with his
Real
daughter.
home.
Did you move a fair amount?
I want you to think about that this week.
He got to the point where he actually did the admitting. What else did you notice? Any comments or observations of that?
She was a bit uncomfortable with the first night.
She sort of rearranged herself in a way that he was not too close.
He did.
But then he did move forward. What else happened there? Some very interesting things. The whole business of using that kind of imagery is, if you're comfortable, if you can, as a facilitator, can orchestrate that, it's very, very worthwhile. Another thing that is on the video that you didn't see, only because of time, was that she said to Len, I wish he would hold me more often. He never holds me. He used to. He doesn't anymore. And so he said to her, would you like him to hold you? Would you like him to do it now? And she said yes. And so he asked them to put their arm, embrace each other there. And she said, that feels so good. Now, if you're not comfortable with that, obviously don't do it. And some counselors are more than others, and it comes with your feeling comfortable with your counseling role. But it worked for them very, very well, and they needed that. And then he said, then will you promise each other that you will do, how often will you promise that you will do that to each other this week? And they made a contract, then came back and talked about it. What he had was on the board, he said, name 3 things you'd like her to do for you. He wrote them down. Name 3 things you'd like him to do for you. Wrote them down. Okay, now you choose. From the 3 that he's chosen, which would you like to do for him this week? And they chose. Then they contracted to do it. And the scene that you've seen, they were talking about that. How did it feel? Any other comments and observations about that? Yes?
Are you using a great deal of classes, control theory in reality?
Not a great deal, but it came through on that. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Yes, it really did. But no, we're not using a great deal of that. Mainly because you have to have a real experienced therapist to be able to handle that. And most of the training that we're doing is just basic work. But we did use that in that particular occasion. And that particular one that's actually what happened in that particular setting. So that's why they did that.
This wasn't role play.
No, this was role playing, but they were acting out a circumstance that had happened in one of the counseling sessions, and that was an original how it had actually happened. Yeah. But he said, I'll ask you to stand in the middle. But he didn't ask them to, did you notice how he moved right back from both of them? He didn't want to get caught in the trap of any of that.
I thought he was transferring, he was transferring the ball back into the court.
Yes. Yeah, we do a fair amount of that as well. So they make the decisions, they come up with it. That part of that, so we do indeed use. To finish it off, it did turn out exceptionally well. They did find a church. They did go to church. They are going to church, and it worked out very, very well. And they are today a very happy family, and it's because of their gratitude that they wanted their sessions to be taped using role playing. But they were very pleased to have it happen. Worked out exceptionally well. Any questions on any of that?
I just wondered why she didn't seem to say enough about Shelley and welcoming her, making her feel.
I think some of the ways in which she said it was, we have Shelley.
She did say that.
Which came as a surprise to me. I would have thought that he was trying to push that onto her. I thought that came out very, very easily. You'll notice that in the back of the book we've just given you ways that you finish off. One is by referral, and I say this sincerely, please remember that if the folk that are coming to you are beyond the kind of guidance and help you can give to them, it is not a failure to do a referral. Just refer them to someone else. Your department head or our office has referrals right across Canada for people who are needing that kind of assistance. There's referral, there's obviously the satisfactory completing of it. You have contracted with them for 6 or 8 weeks. When that is over, you assess it and it's finished. It doesn't continue on and on for the rest of their natural life. Then that means you haven't been handling the process. You haven't been doing it. You've been doing it at content level instead of the material, instead of the lower background of their life. And the third one is when they walk out in desperation. There's a satisfactory ending, there's the referral, and there's you've got it on page 32. Referring to referrals. Sometimes you do referrals on page 32 because you haven't got the time. Sometimes because you haven't got the skill. Those various reasons, and those have to be acknowledged. They're very important. Very important to remember that. And then the premature ending, when somebody walks out and they won't complete it anymore. And usually that's because we try to work it up too fast, and we're going through a process and leaving them behind, and they're not with us. And we know where we're going, somehow we haven't given them opportunity to be with us. That kind of premature ending. Premature endings, satisfactory endings, or referral endings are 3 ways in which it has to be ended off. We've just done a smattering of it this afternoon relating to counseling. Any questions that you would have?
Yeah, just one cautionary note from my own experience. Make sure you know who you're referring the person to. Who is the referral? I referred one couple to a real good, I thought, solid Christian counselor that she advertised as such, and she has all the credentials and everything. She threw those couple straight out the door, and they'll never get back together.
And I hope you have made a note of that. Yeah, that's quite true. Yes. And if you're, one of the things that Colonel Boyden did for us before he left the department was give us a full referral across Canada of Christian counselors that you would be comfortable with. So if you need that, phone our office, collect and get that, because we'd be glad to do that. In some cases it's quite expensive, unfortunately. It's not all free. And I think it's on page 32 you have a listing of why you would do referrals to people. And that's just for your information. I've given you lots of things like that. Anything else as we conclude?
Just my thoughts are, this was an ideal situation for us. Most of the situations we're involved in at the start of quality and behind prison walls and that different areas.
Then you can't do referrals, and so you've got to do the best that you can, or get some training, or bring someone in from your department, or that kind of thing. Or do the best that you can. I have been in situations where people are not prepared to to accept a referral anywhere else. They say things like, if you can't help me, I won't go anywhere else. Therefore, you've got to do the best you can by either getting some training or you go to referrals who will help you with some more information, some more knowledge, some more understanding of the situation. It might have specifics relating, for instance, to abuse, and you haven't had background understanding or training in that, so you've got to go and get some guidance from them so that you can indeed do that. And I think that's the only way you can handle it in those situations, doing the best you can under the circumstances.
I wonder if anybody here has ever had to deal with release of information, like you have this close relationship in your counseling, and you feel that you could say something to the courts that could be a help, but I've just come by this lately, so I had all these forms done up so that if I get them to sign, I say, now I think the Crown Attorney should know this, and I promise that I'll tell them this happened, but I don't want them to like shit and race it here before, you know. But that's good knowledge for them. But I could never say that unless I, first of all,
have permission.
Yeah.
That's usually, and if, I guess individually within your own department, you would have those kind of guidelines. That's part of the contracting that I do with people that you're counseling, so they will understand if things like that come up, that nothing will be said certainly without your permission, those kinds of things. Anything else, or any comments or additions or things that could be helpful?
Some psychiatrists, Christian one I'm thinking of in particular out west, they will use OHIP.
Yes, they will. And I think, you can correct me, Major, but I believe that's a provincial thing, isn't it? Some places you can cover that kind of counseling under OHIP, others cannot. Some provinces, yes, it's a provincial thing, and it's very helpful if it can, and very expensive if you can't, and restricting if you can't, especially if people are on welfare, those kinds of things. Some army facilities have been very helpful in those areas. And then the psychiatrist you get at times is questionable. I've really enjoyed coming. Thank you very much for your attention and for the contribution that you have made this afternoon.